I've heard you mention this a couple times, that there was somebody in the many years ago in Freemasonry. He was at a higher level, and he wrote about how they were infiltrated by a cult. Would you consider that? I can't remember the name of the cult would you consider that the Illuminati?
Yes, I'm glad you brought it up. So this was the Duke of Brunswick. This was in the 1700s. So again, this didn't come from some local tinfoil hatter. This came from the highest in the land. He was the master of worldwide Freemasonry at the time. Okay, and again, Freemasonry, it's a whole other story. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this guy was the Duke of Brunswick, and he came out and said he called for the worldwide disbandment of Freemasonry, because he said we've been infiltrated by some sun cult that uses hypnotism, the power of suggestion, and electromagnetism, and it uses black magic, and it is perverting our order. Because Masonry really was just trying to preserve a lot of this ancient knowledge that would have been otherwise sequestered by the church and the Vatican over time, right? So it started probably as a good thing of just how to build and symbolism from the ancient world and Hermeticism and Gnosticism. It was just trying to preserve that. But he was saying in the 1700s, it was infiltrated, and they used the lower degrees of Freemasonry. This is where Albert Pike comes in with this. And he said, we'll use the lower degrees of Freemasonry to hide, because the public is accustomed to it. They don't think anything of it. And they liked the degree system, which was built like a military order within Masonry, because they could hide in there. And Masonry was already really attractive by a lot of the elites and the royalty, etc. So they went, so this Duke was coming out and blowing the whistle. He was a whistleblower, and he was saying, and there's many quotes that he had where he was trying to say, it's so bad, this infection, we have to stop, we have to disband and try to reframe what we're doing. And he actually said that this order is a solar or sun cult that takes after the nature of the Illuminati, if not that order itself. That's what he said. So he's basically saying it's either like the Illuminati, or it actually is that order that we thought disappeared. And when he mentioned a sun cult, you think about that. Nothing wrong with the sun. The sun obviously gives us life, but there are two solar cults that came out of ancient Egypt. One was more about understanding the life-giving nature of the sun. They were the Hermeticists, the nature, and they were like, wow, the sun is the god in the sky that gives us life. And then there was what they call the worship of the black sun, or the dark side of the sun, the side we don't see. And that's where this dark, perverted form of Illuminism came from. And that's where Satanism and all those different words come from. It has an origin in these cults. And so basically, the analogy that my colleague Michael Tessarian gave to me to explain it, because he's an expert on this stuff, is he said, when you think of light, everybody thinks that it means something positive all the time. And of course, light is positive. There's all this good stuff with light. But light can also be used as a weapon. So light can reveal, but it can also conceal. Like if I take a flashlight and shine it right in your eyes, you can't see anything. You're blinded by the light. So in that case, the use of light was just weaponized to blind you from seeing what was around. Whereas if I shine that light down just a little bit, you'll be able to see the ground at your feet, and it'll illuminate your path. Does that make sense? Yeah, so what I think Illuminism is, whether they call themselves Illuminati, whether they call themselves Templars, it doesn't matter. It's all the same idea, is that they wanted to find a way to use the properties of light, because they also know that human consciousness is photonic light. So they go, if we just use the properties of light, we can manipulate consciousness. We can guide consciousness instead of allowing consciousness to grow organically. We'll control it. And so and you hear that song, Blinded by the Light, right? Yeah, it's just, there's symbolism everywhere. And what does Hollywood do? What does the media do? They're flickering light in your eyes that communicate to the back of your mind, and then your brain actually starts to construct reality based on that input. So that means they can control your very understanding of reality simply by using tricks of light. And then you think of like other examples, like the stage hypnotists and the magicians and all that, where they're deceiving you, and you go there to be deceived. You're like, oh, that looks like it's real magic. You're being deceived. You just can't figure out how. But how can a stage performer go up on stage and get an entire general audience of people under the same hex, just like that? It's amazing. And so they started studying the properties of the mind. And this is where I think a lot of these illuminist groups started to take control of the intelligence organizations like the CIA, NSA, the Five Eyes. It's funny they call it the Five Eyes. But anyways, they did all these experiments like MK Ultra, which was done in Montreal, on Canada, and many others that were designed to try to figure out, the Milgram experiments and Pavlov and all that, the behaviorists. They were trying to figure out what are the keys to the human mind that we can use to bend to our own ends. And that is what this Duke was warning the world about back then in the 1700s. He's like, these guys use black magic, meaning hidden, they use hypnotic suggestion, mainstream media, CNN, and then they also use electromagnetism. Think about where we're at now with technology, 5G, all this stuff. The frequency bandwidth, all the rain. What's that book about the hidden rainbow, right? Think about that. Using light in a way that was weaponized for a specific end. So that's the best analogy I can give. And those quotes were powerful for me because, and I've got loads of them from people like that who warned that these groups, they might have changed names, but they didn't go anywhere. Like maybe people thought for a while that the mafia came and went, and then they realized, no, the mafia was there the whole time. Or in any kind of organized crime, they suppress it over here, and then it grows up over there under a different name, right? Or a mob business, they get found out to be a mob business, they shut down, and then they reopen in the same location with a different name.
That's right.
Right? Like that's what these secret societies do, because they're secret and they're also a small group of people. So for anybody to think, when all these guys come out to debunk and go, no, the Illuminati, they were all arrested in France and they got shut down. And it's like, all right, I got something to sell you here, man, because that doesn't add up when you really follow the trail. They didn't go anywhere.
And it's like the pharmaceutical companies. If a drug gets banned, they just change the name of the drug. Change the names.
Exactly. It's deception. They call it the holy art of deception. That's what they say. Is there anything holy about deception? I don't think so. But they look at it as an art because for them, that's how they gain power. That's how they've gained power over the world. But interesting how in everything I'm saying, I don't want anybody to be freaked out by this because everything I'm saying also has a solution in it. So if they are here to wield the light in a twisted way to warp your mind, well, what do? Then you use the proper light from within, the light within. You understand what light really is, the light of truth, the light of freedom, yes. Right? Then everything they do to try to manipulate your mind, the only way they can manipulate your mind is if you lose yourself, if you lose your center, if you lose your critical thinking, if you stop listening to the kingdom of heaven within, your intuition.
That's right. Jesus said, I am
shut
the light.
That down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I am the light. I am the truth. No one comes through the Father except through me. It's the light. The Bible is always talking about the light,